Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Ramda Khan. And yes, as you know, we give you sports information from all across the globe. And you guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is @ Indus News Sports. That basically works both for Twitter and for Instagram. But anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. And yes, from the world of cricket, yes, PCB is set for the PSL Season 6 and they'll start it from the June 7th. And yes, from the world of NBA, yes, we're talking about the playoffs. Brooklyn Nets win against Boston Celtics 123-109, while Suns beat the Lakers 115-85 in Game 5. And yes, from the world of tennis, yes, we talk about the French Open. Rublev is actually knocked out of the first round of the French Open. But yes, Nadal and Djokovic have been eased through to round 2. And yes, from the world of Olympics, badminton star Mahur Shehzad is representing Pakistan and we're looking forward for her performance. And yes, those were the headlines. And surely, yes, we're talking about PSL Season 6. And yes, PSL is tentative. The tentative date that we have is the 7th, but it's still very tricky. And to discuss the entire perspective of the PSL, which obviously is starting and will be finishing by, maybe because initially it had to finish early, but now it's also delaying because of which Pakistan's upcoming matches will be an upcoming tour to England will definitely be delayed. But anyways, to discuss the in-depth analysis, we have with us Mohisha, who's a senior cricket analyst. Mohisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great. So I would start off with this current situation of PSL Season 6. Obviously, it is very tricky. Would you like to shed more light on the idea that we still have a tentative date, but there are too many question marks in terms of the season of PSL 6 itself?
Yeah, now 2 weeks into the start of arrangements, we haven't know yet when the PSL remaining matches of the PSL will get underway. The thing is that authorities in Abu Dhabi, they are keeping on shifting their post since initially they have allowed Indian crew to land in Abu Dhabi and stay there for to complete their quarantine period.
Right.
But then they asked them to vacate the hotel rooms, and they now are in Abu Dhabi. As you know, it's an Indian broadcasting company that is looking after the coverage arrangements of the PSL 20 PSL remaining matches. So it's always been a tricky situation for the Pakistan Cricket Board. They haven't managed everything to the perfection till now. But now, finger crossed, we still expect that PSL would start around 7 to 8 of June. After going through all these formalities, which has yet to be completed, Indians or people in authorities in Abu Dhabi,
right,
they are not allowing Indian people to stay there for a quarantine. People even they're not allowed them to stay there for the coverage also. So it is a sort of tricky situation for Pakistan Cricket Board.
And if we look into the situation, it has also been told that major possibility is that if the broadcasters don't get the approval, then they may have to shift it to Sharjah.
I think the chances of shifting these matches to Sharjah are pretty remote.
Right.
But I don't think so. That is a possibility now. Arrangements have been finalized so far. But I think the moment the Indian crew will complete their quarantine period in Dubai, I think things will improve and they will be allowed to cover the event in Abu Dhabi.
Right.
Today, a majority of the Pakistani contingent, Pakistani franchise players and officials,
right,
that started their quarantine in Abu Dhabi from May 27. They will be completing their quarantine today. Today
right,
is the last day of their quarantine period. So I have just talked to someone in the Islamabad United, and they have told me that they have gone through the last test early in the morning today.
Right.
And at the results, we will be allowed to go for our practice session, to start our practice session at the ground today evening.
Right. So I hope things go as per plan, because I think there's too much of pressure and too much of question marks overall in terms of if, for instance, they actually manage to maybe shift it ahead. How do you think it will affect? Because then we are looking at, the tour to England. We've already asked them to switch the date from the 23rd of June to the 25th. If the PSL moves further forward, how do you think this will all turn out to be?
That is a possibility. Pakistan is going to start their England tour for 3 one-day international and 3 T20s. Originally, the schedule was that Pakistan would be taking their flight to England starting from June 23rd.
Right.
But now, since Pakistan is going to play their first ODI international on July 8th, so they have got enough time with them.
Right.
They can even travel to they can travel on June 25 or 26. So they only have to complete a quarantine period of 7 to 8 days there in England.
Right.
So they have time at their disposal. That is not the problem. The problem here is that when we are going to see the start of PSL6, the remaining matches, the question everybody is asking these days. But so far, I don't think Pakistan Cricket Board has met any deadline when it comes to preparation, when it comes to finalizing the schedule, when it comes to keeping everything in place for the start of PSL matches.
Right. So when do you currently think that things will obviously shape up and we'll probably have a clearer picture of the PSL6 scheduling?
So it's $1 million question. We have been listening since I think the start of May.
Right.
That everything has been kept in order and things will go normal in say 2 weeks time, and the PSL6 will restart from June 1.
Right.
But now I think it's difficult for the Pakistan Cricket Board to start the things even before June 7 or June 8. Right. So we might see, going into these matches, we might see double headers on almost every day, or chances are there that we may not see playoffs. They may go straight into the semi-finals or finals, something like that. They're working on it, but the first thing first. Has the authorities in UAE, they have permitted, they have given go-ahead to the Indian crew to cover the event and to send the signals across the board, starting from ending the moment they end their quarantine paper in Dubai. Right. So that is the main question, I think, at the moment.
And in terms of talking about them asking the Indian broadcasters to leave their hotels, what exactly or where exactly do you think the situation escalated from, and why did they decide to do that?
I think the problem is that they should have. These are formalities. You have to complete these formalities well ahead of everything.
Right.
They must be knowing. The PCB people must be knowing that whether the Indian crew will be allowed to stay here in Abu Dhabi, or whether it is important to ask them to go through their quarantine period in Dubai. So that is the problem. I don't think what has gone wrong. I don't know what has gone wrong that they have asked the Indian crew to vacate the place at hotel in Abu Dhabi. What has gone wrong there? Possibly some positive tests, COVID positive tests, something like that. I don't know. Right. Nothing has come out so far. But there had been something seriously wrong, which forced the authorities in Abu Dhabi to ask them to vacate the hotels and go to Dubai to complete their quarantine period.
And that's a very tricky situation, to be honest, looking into the situation and then asking them to go to another city, another place, even though they have completed their isolation. So we'd surely want to know more in terms of how things escalate in the future and in terms of the PSL execution. My last question from you, sir, would be talking about Pakistan cricket team going to England. do you think after this whole situation and this whole PSL's perspective, if they go to England, how do you see that, the tour itself turning up for the green shirts?
No, the problem that is what I foresee, the problem that lies ahead is they, if they go on to play two matches in a day, the weather is too hot in Abu Dhabi, even in Sharjah, even in Dubai.
Right.
This time of the year is not to play cricket under the sun.
Absolutely.
So there is, the weather is very hot, and majority of the players who would be representing their franchises and who are representing their teams in the PSL, they are going to, they will be the part of Pakistani contingent for the England tour.
Right.
So God forbid, if something wrong happens, if some player, a key player, one of the key players go down with the say
dehydration, because obviously there's a lot of dehydration. Yes, any injury
and bear the brunt of heavy and hot weather.
Right.
So Pakistan would always be under considerable pressure, and that is not the right thing forward, taking the team into the England tour.
Right.
And you must be knowing that from England, Pakistan are going to tour West Indies. They are not coming back to Pakistan.
Agreed.
They are going to West Indies from there on.
Right. So it's going to be a very hard journey, which is going to be for the Pakistan cricket team. Sir, thank you so very much for being a part of the show and discussing the in-depth analysis about cricket.
Play.
So I think we pretty much have some in-depth analysis on how things will go by. And yes, the crazy part would definitely be if our team is out there in the sun playing the PSL matches and then going to England, and after England going to West Indies, and if something happens in between or they get unwell because of the heat in Abu Dhabi, or if shifted to Sharjah, it's surely going to be a rough and tough journey for the boys. But anyways, what we'll do is we'll take a quick break, and once we come back from the break, we'll discuss the world of sports. See you guys after the break. And welcome back from the break. And yes, before the break, we were discussing the world of cricket, but as we give you information about the rest of the sports, we'll be definitely talking about the world of NBA. And yes, there are too many interesting playoff matches that are currently happening. And to discuss in-depth analysis of the victories and the things that actually happened, we have with us Matthew Marinda. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So Matthew, we'll start off, obviously, we start with Brooklyn Nets victory, obviously over Celtics, 129 to 109 in Game 5, and now they've actually clinched the lead by 4-1. How do you see this match, and where are now the trios going?
So it pretty much went the way everyone thought it would, I think. The Nets just had so much more talent, and by the end of the series, especially in the clinching win, their big three of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden all played brilliantly and looked great together. Whereas for the Celtics, unless Jason Tatum scores 50, which he did in the one game that they won, they just didn't have enough to compete with Brooklyn. So a very disappointing season for Boston, who thought they would be a title contender. Now Brooklyn moves on to play Milwaukee, which should be an incredible series.
Right, and if we look into the match, it straightforwardly starts from the first quarter. When we look at it, it's definitely, they started the lead 31 and Celtics were 24. And I think after that, the lead just continued and Celtics could not just get hold of the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, you would see in the game, which unfortunately for Boston, they lost Jaylen Brown, one of their all-stars, shortly before the playoffs started. And you saw it in the game last night. They just didn't have enough offense to keep up with Brooklyn. They would fall down by maybe 12 or 14, and then they would cut it down to 8, and it would almost be close. And then just suddenly Brooklyn would hit 2 3-pointers in a row, and it just took Boston so long to fight back, and Brooklyn could just brush them aside very quickly.
Right, and losing, obviously, one of your key persons is definitely an issue, because this is something that Brooklyn Nets have been going through for a long time, and I guess they all waited for the playoffs to begin, because after that, now we actually see the trios, managing to gel in and perform at their very best.
Yeah, they took a gamble that they could wait until the playoffs to play them together, and I think it worked for them against Boston. The question will be, the degree of difficulty for them goes up significantly now that they're playing Milwaukee, which is a much, much better team and which has a big three of their own who are excellent and will be good matchups for Brooklyn. So I think the real test for their experiment will be how do they do against the Bucks. If they beat Milwaukee, their gamble was completely justified. If they don't, it might raise some questions.
And in terms of Milwaukee, to be honest, I've seen them evolve very quickly, and obviously they do have a very strong hold in terms of keeping the game on board. And I think with Nets facing them, it would definitely be one of the most interesting matches out there.
Yeah, they're one of the only teams that can match up with the big three at every position. So as great as Kevin Durant is, Milwaukee has Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's won 2 of the last 3 MVPs. As great as Kyrie Irving is, Drew Holiday is probably the best defensive guard in the NBA. And then James Harden, obviously brilliant. But Chris Middleton is also a wonderful player for the Bucks. So they may be the team that is the best suited to match up with Brooklyn in terms of the stars, and then it may come down to how the other players perform.
Right, and if you remember, there were 2 consecutive games the Brooklyn Nets actually lost a few weeks ago when they were facing Bucks, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And at the time, Brooklyn portrayed it as like, okay, we're not really concerned. We just mostly want to get healthy. But it was significant because the reason that the Bucks now will have the confidence going into the series is because they got those wins against Brooklyn. They know they can beat Brooklyn. They have that memory in their muscle. So Brooklyn, again, they've really taken a lot of unusual gambles, which you can do when you have as much talent as they have. But I think Milwaukee is coming into the series with a good amount of confidence, especially after they destroyed Miami 4-0.
Right. I'm so looking forward for this particular match, to be honest, because I see a lot of hopes in the Bucks to begin with, and yes, definitely in terms of being everybody's hot favorites, they all talk about the Nets, but I think Milwaukee, they have struggled and they've gotten to a place where they have all sorts of confidence to get there. Anyways, we'll switch over to the next match that I want to talk about. The Suns versus the Lakers, 115-85. I think LeBron James is definitely would surely be very upset in terms of how things are developing for the Lakers now.
Yes, LeBron James cannot be happy with how things are going in a small sense or a big sense. I saw the game last night. Anthony Davis was out injured and he needed other people to step up, and he had to step up also, and nobody did. Dennis Schroeder missed all 9 of his shots. A lot of the Lakers acquisitions from the summer, Wesley Matthews, Marcus Gasol, nobody played well for the Lakers. And for LeBron, this is an unusual situation. He's never lost in the first round in his entire career.
Right.
But with Davis is looking kind of still like he might be out injured, and just the other Lakers giving him no confidence, it doesn't look good.
Yes, and if we look at the situation of the Phoenix Suns, in the first quarter, they were 34 and the LA Lakers were 26. And the sad part is, if you look at the second quarter, Lakers were only 10 points. They only scored 10 points, and the Phoenix Suns totally dominated them. And they were 32 points.
Yeah, it was a back and forth game early on for a while, and then Phoenix basically went into a higher gear, and the Lakers could not keep up at all. And I think the home court advantage was a big deal. The Suns, the COVID rules are different in different states, and in Arizona, there's much more freedom at this point than there is in California. So the Suns have a big home court advantage. I think that was a major factor with them last night. Devin Booker has played brilliantly in all 3 games in Phoenix, not as well in Los Angeles.
Right.
I think that's been probably an understated factor.
Right. And if we currently look at it in terms of losing by 30 points, I think that's like a very impactful image for the Lakers. And I hope that if we get information with regards to if Anthony Davis is actually going to step in, because right now obviously it's going to be tricky, because I think they need that firepower, because until and unless they do have their duos ready to make those points, the ones that they truly need to move on.
Yeah, sadly, the best hope for the Lakers may be, even if Davis is injured, that Phoenix now is dealing with Chris Paul hurting his other shoulder. He was already having problems with his left shoulder, and then last night There was a play where he got elbowed kind of in the back by Matthews and went down and looked very, very not comfortable. He was able to hit the free throws, but then had to leave the game. That could be the Lakers' best bet, sadly. If Paul is injured, Phoenix is maybe still better, but that would turn the series just as much as Anthony Davis being hurt.
Anyways, we look forward for maybe the next match and hope that things go well, because the Phoenix are now leading 3-2. Anyways, talk about the next match, which obviously was an interesting one. The Nuggets managing to beat the Trail Blazers 147-140.
Yeah, this was maybe the craziest game of the year in the NBA.
Right.
Went to double overtime. So similar to the other series that we talked about with Tatum in Boston and with LeBron, Damian Lillard had 55 points. He hit three-pointers to tie the game at the end of regulation. He hit three-pointers to tie the game at the end of overtime. He had a game that everyone was talking about and probably no one will ever forget. But nobody else on Portland really did anything. And whereas for Denver, they were more of a combined effort. Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter, Austin Rivers, who's been a really big late season addition for them. So sadly, Lillard had a game for history,
Right.
but nobody else on his team could help him.
Right, and looking at Lillard's 55 points, I think, and obviously it was a high-scoring game. If we look at the entire situation, the Nuggets obviously started off quicker. They were 38 points and in the first quarter, and obviously the Trailblazers were 25. And I think the start actually, kind of brought them to the point of choking and, losing against the Nuggets.
Yeah, it's kind of this typical story for Portland. They got behind big early. They're so talented, especially with Lillard, that they were able to fight back through a lot. But as you said, if they just had gotten off to a better start,
Right.
Things would have gone. You can't be down 22 in the second quarter on the road against a team like Denver and expect to win. And yet, still, it has to be dispiriting that they came so close and just couldn't quite get it done.
Right. In the long run, who exactly? Because I think the games have actually come up to a point of creating that ambience. What do you think? How would the next game turn out to be if the situation is like this? Because it surely is a super close call.
I think Portland. I still think Portland will probably come out and play better because just so many of them struggled. The question is, I don't know. If anyone can continue to just sustain this level of play, maybe it's Lillard. But it seems hard to. How much can you ask of this one player? How brilliant can continue to be? Hopefully, their players they'll go home, so they'll have they'll be comfortable. They'll have their fans around. I think that will help. But I think Denver has to feel a tremendous sense of relief, and that can sometimes cause a lot of optimism. Denver can know, like, as great as Lillard was, we still beat them. If he's not that brilliant again, it should be easier. Doesn't mean it will be, but we'll see. I think Denver has reason to feel good.
Anyways, right now, obviously, Denver leads 3-2. Let's hope for the very best. Matthew, thank you so very much for joining us and discussing the playoffs from the world of NBA.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Great. So yeah, it was Matthew, and surely it is going to be super interesting. Obviously, Denver now leading the Trail Blazers, and obviously it's 3-2. And if things go this way, it would be very tricky. And same goes for the Lakers, because LeBron James cannot do it on his own. And losing against the Sun, this is the second consecutive game that they have actually lost. But anyways, this was pretty much from the world of NBA. I'll quickly jump into the French Open. Yes. Talking about Rublev, who was actually knocked out of the first round of the French Open. And Nadal and Djokovic have actually eased into the second round. And not only that, Rublev is lost the game after losing in the 5 sets game. And Leonard Struff actually beat Rublev 6-3, 7-6, 4-6, 3-6, and 6-4. And Nadal has won French Open for the fact that, she was not attending the press conferences, but she definitely did talk about the mental health awareness, which the World Tennis Association will surely discuss with her. Anyways, this was the tennis side. I'll quickly jump into the Olympic side. Yes, talking about Olympics, we still have a representation from Pakistan. We're talking about Mahur Shahzad, who's representing Pakistan in Tokyo Olympics. Mahur is Pakistan's #1 badminton player, and she's ranked amongst the top 133, women players in the world. And we're so looking forward to see her perform in the Olympics, and she had won a gold medal for Pakistan in the international series back in 2019. So we wish her the very best in terms of scoring the gold for Pakistan very soon. Anyways, guys, this was pretty much it from the world of sports. If you want to reach out to us, you can on our social media handle, which is @Indus News Sports. Till then, take good care of yourselves, and bye-bye.